Top 5 college football playoff thoughts after this new vote to finally get to the 5-7 model. Number 5. Maybe recapping some of our opinions from earlier in the show, but some people did not get to see that. So how long before more home games gets discussed? That's a question. Now, how viable it is or how realistic it is to shake the New Year's Six out of this equation remains to be seen, but we did mention it. If you're watching, if you're Michigan and watching Georgia have this great home crowd and you don't get it, how long before you try to bend the rules in your favor and point them in that direction so that if you get a bye, you also get a home game?
Yeah. I mean, we started talking about that, and then Dan Walken had plenty of thoughts. Wetzel, excuse me. Yeah, definitely a difference there. Dan Wetzel had some thoughts on it too, and I think we all agree that you're definitely going to be one of those teams that gets a bye, looking around on that first night of games, going, "Damn, that's cool!" Like that would be like we'd almost rather be playing tonight. That's so cool to host a playoff game. So yeah, I think that's inevitable. I just don't know how in the world you're not going to want to host a playoff game on campus. There might be some unique circumstances, like I guess Dan pointed out, where if you've already played once during the season, then maybe you'd want to do something differently because you already played, let's say, like in Knoxville, and so you'd want to go maybe neutral site Atlanta. But I mean, I don't know how that would work. I mean, I'm sure there will be some instances where it's not just the perfect thing, but yeah, I feel like this will be a topic that's discussed in short order, and I just don't know how you're going to balance that with the bye. I mean, you can't have both, right? You can't get a bye and then you're playing one less game than everybody.
Well,
but
it's got a simple solution as far as how you fix
expanding the playoff to 16 and everybody plays a first-round game.
Yeah, or this other one is telling the New Year's Six this is not how it's going to work anymore, and that you guys' time has come and gone, but those are pretty good rackets that they have going on, and they have a lot of power. I mean, look, the Rose Bowl held this up because they had to have it, their schedule, the way that they wanted it, so that's easier said than done. Like, it's a simple idea, like, oh, hey, it's kind of like, why doesn't the government just pay for health insurance like they do for the military? And like, it's not that simple.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. You see, we discussed this. I know that they want the bye week and then a home game.
No, that's not what anybody has said that they want. But I'm saying if you're Georgia or any other Michigan and you get that bye week, that's awesome. But then you're sitting there and you're going,
man,
it'd be a lot cooler if we were playing, though. Like we were hosting Ole Miss at Ann Arbor, for a playoff.
And look, how long before maybe the national attitude changes? I think it has, like, these neutral site early season games are kind of going away a little bit because college football is not about being played at AT&T Stadium unless it's the national championship game. Then to me, it makes sense to do that. But if you're talking about what makes college football great, it is like what Dan Wetzel said, it is being in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Manhattan, Kansas, or, wherever, and playing that game in that city, or Ames, Iowa, Tallahassee, Florida, Gainesville, like that's it. All those other places get tons of stuff and they don't care. Like this is what college football is about. That's why I think they're going to say that's pretty cool. How do we change this? And not because they want the advantage of both things, but they want that experience, and also the city will want that money.
Yeah, I think that there's going to have to be a trade-off of some sort, whether it's the bowls, like you mentioned, or maybe it's the getting rid of a bye week. But, yeah, that's definitely going to be a topic moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4, how can they contain playoff expansion talk before they've even done this? That's what I
hate to tell you.
Yeah, I know you're not going to, but like right now it's like, okay, it's 12. We finally got to 5 plus 7, and there's already like, well, when it goes to 16, like, well, you don't even know if 12 is going to work the right way yet, or this is the best way for 12, or if the entire structure of the sport isn't going to be different in a year and a half. Like, you don't know all that, so let's just get through these 2 years. Let's get through the first year first. Let's get through this year, see what's wrong with it, see where it needs to be tweak it, and make those notes, and then move on past it. But, yeah, I think that's the one thing I saw today from, and not just like, regular Joes, but media people like this is when they need to get to 16. You're like, whoa.
And let's face it, most media people are just regular Joes with a title.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's really, but and I say that as one of them. But I did see various blogs over the years have done the whole "what if the playoffs started this year" thing, and I think even ESPN got in onto that with some of their graphics and everything.
Yep.
Your question about the bowls, like getting out of the way, maybe being one of the ways to expand. I know this is going back to the previous point, but you could do that, like. If you had 16 teams, but you had to have no buys though. And if you did that, all 16 teams, but it'd have to be a 16-team playoff, play 8 first-round games, and then you do Peach is a quarterfinal. Fiesta's a quarterfinal, Cotton and Orange are quarterfinals, and then you'd have Rose and Sugar are your semis, and then you have the CFP championship. So, but that would mean adding 4 teams. That'd mean get rid of a bye. So there's going to have to be some concessions, but I don't think that this part right here is going to be sustainable at all. There's already calls, like you said, for 16. It seems like the SEC and the Big Ten, with whatever their motivations are, ultimately, we'll find out more tomorrow, I think, on that. Or if they don't get what they want, or is that going to be enough? Or are they going to want to push the field higher? And just in general, if they get all they want, does everybody else revolt?
If they go past a certain number, don't they have to start cutting back on games during the season? And
I would think so.
You might lose home games anyway.
I don't think there's any way you can go past 16.
Well, they're going to play 16 or 17 games.
But I don't know how you can do like a 32 would be stupid. You don't even do a top 32 poll. You do a top 25. So. But, I think that this is inevitable, that there's going to be 16 team calls here in the very near future.
Oh, man. Hannah Lewis, next step, expand to 16 teams effective 2026, and that might happen.
That's the thing. 2 years is all we're getting here. I mean, that's the only thing is guaranteed is there's a 12-team playoff for this year and next, or the year after, and that's it. Beyond that, there is nothing in place.
They could go back to the BCS for all we know.
They could. They could.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't go over that well with anyone, but
no, but it's much more likely they would go. I wonder if you could have the BCS or the 4-team playoff, what the vote outcome would be on that, because the 4-team was not the most popular by the end of it, but maybe that was just unique in this final year. But the playoff expansion, it seems almost inevitable that that's going to be a thing again in a couple years.
Absolutely. Number 3. Future of the Pac-2 is even more nebulous. Like after today, you hear Kirk Schultz go, "Well, there wasn't a lot of support for my plan." Like, no. There was not. There was absolutely not. And, what has to happen? Like, everything about them seems to hinge on what the future of the ACC is, to me right now. And that's not even a guarantee. But whatever the future of the ACC is, I think Oregon State and Washington State are going to have to wait that out and see. So...
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's only 2 landing spots for them. They're not getting in the SEC, and they're not getting in the Big Ten. That's just the way that it is, and the same could be said for 90% of those 2 leagues, if not higher. So we know there's some darlings that are still available, mostly in the ACC now, if not all the way in the ACC. And there's a handful of those, but beyond that, I don't know. The future looks just dark for everybody involved, even the schools that are probably sitting there with life rafts. They still don't even quite know what's going on just yet. But, it's a tough time for the Bees and the Cougs, and I don't know that today really makes you feel all that better about things or ensures you that things are going in the direction that you want. We still don't really know the details about kind of how that unfolded behind the scenes, because you've got Schultz saying, well, I never intended to, halt any plans. But did he get any kind of assurances, or kind of what was the conversation like? That we're not privy to. So without knowing that, it's just a mystery of what these 2 are looking at here in a couple of years. You've at least got the life raft of the money coming in, and that's a lot of money. And we'll see how maybe that helps you grease some palms and gets you a nice landing spot in a couple of years. But for right now, it's still just a question mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it probably even depends on how many teams the ACC would lose. I'm like right now, I'm sure Jim Phillips knows he's losing Florida State one way or the other.
Hey, would you and Florida State get your, stop being such...
We say that, and it's true, but they still have to go out and actually do that, though, because, there's nothing saying that we won't be here in 3 years from now, and we're still talking about Florida State talking...
But, but look, they're they're leaving as soon as the light changes, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, how long they're sitting at that light is to be determined. What I'm sure Jim Phillips is hoping is that it's a very controlled, it's one of those. It's a controlled burn of a forest fire.
Listen, Texas OU shook up the world and shook up college football. That actually was a pretty decent controlled burn in the end. This will not be a controlled burn.
Yeah, but it's also like, what if what happens is the ACC loses the teams that people expect them to lose, and then they go, all right, let's go further west. We've already got Cal, we've already got Stanford, but what is the ACC in the eyes of the playoff at that point?
Yeah. No, good point.
They're not the same.
Same for the Big 12.
Yep,
like,
absolutely.
What does that even look like in 2 years?
That's why reacting the way Yormark did as quickly as he did just to get the TV deal, much less stay among the autonomy conferences, was such a huge deal.
But he's already having – I mean, it was and it is, but he's already having to turn right around and start working on the next one because, there's nothing guaranteed for them after that.
And he has probably 2 or 3 different options, looking at him at least.
Number 2. Now let's see the real TV deal. And look, some people haven't even backed off of this, that ESPN has this, 6-year deal for this thing, when multiple people have reported that the conferences haven't even seen the memo yet. They don't even know what to like. Today was the day that they actually voted on, here's what this is going to be. So now they can go to the TV network and set it up the way that it is. So now let's see the real TV deal, which might be the TV deal that's been reported ultimately. But I still think that there's some squares to fill in there.
Bob Thompson, and not just him, but Pat Crakes and others have said that it's about a 22 or 25% increase based on the last year of the 12-year deal and the first year of what's being reported. And they still think that is very low compared to what everyone thought they would get, if that's what it is.
Which kind of points me in 2 directions of, does that inevitably lead to the great split? So that way these first-round games that are maybe not as attractive as the way they're being positioned right now to the big networks would be, if you're saying, well, it's guaranteed you're going to get like 3 or 4 million because we're going to have like Ole Miss versus Ohio State as a first round. Like, you know what I'm saying there? Like, you juice the matchups by having the conferences involved more, but that's like just me trying to figure out a way of how you could maximize those first round games and make them more attractive to a TV network, because there's not really anything else you could do other than guarantee, like, we'll have these fan bases of these size involved, basically guaranteed. But you can't guarantee that now because you don't know from Iowa State to Tulane who's going to be involved. But if they're already lowballing that, then how is expanding going to even help that in the future? Yeah. Because then you're just adding more first round games and more teams who would just further water it down. So yeah, something's weird about that whole deal and kind of what they're eyeing in terms of the balance of expansion and the actual money that's out there. But yeah, I mean, last we saw there was a deal and then there wasn't, and the reporting on it was just kind of odd until you finally had the MAC commissioner come out and like clear the air and say like, no, there's not a deal. We haven't even seen anything, basically. So yeah, that's a situation to keep monitoring for sure. Yeah.
Number 1, how is the Big 10 going to push for the conference specific, or the Big 2, I guess, going to push for the conference specific AQs? If it's not the SEC proposed none, the Big 10 might be behind this.
Wonder why they did that.
How? Well, look, the SEC is like, I think it was smart in their plan to be like, listen, there's no limit on AQs. Nobody's promised one, knowing that they're set up to just do it anyway because they've fed the propaganda for so long. But if the Big 10 floated out 4, there would be very, like that would even limit what the SEC could get, right? And so I don't think the SEC is going to be in favor of the Big 10 getting 4 when they're like, well, if you got 4, then most years we could get 6. Like, that's not, if you're basing it on history, and that's what they shouldn't do, which is why there shouldn't be specific AQs for each conference.
Why don't they let the season play out year to year and see what happens and stop worrying about whether or not, because the SEC's been dominant for 20 years, they should
because it's not about the fans and the product.
Just let the freaking seasons play out, and then at the end of the year, pick your 12. Some of them are automatic, and if the only reason, if a conference doesn't want automatic qualifiers, is because they know going in they're going to get 6 or 7 or how many teams, because that would be better for them. And so I don't blame them. But, God, can we just let some seasons play themselves out, which they hopefully will?
No, we're following very different sports. We're already talking about the playoff being opened up in 2 years from now and the future of the playoff, and we just got the 12-team confirmed today. So, no, we're in the wrong line of business for just letting things settle and sit without speculation or wondering about the future. And that's warranted, I think, for college football and college athletics because it is such a topsy-turvy, day-by-day kind of a deal with all of the different storylines. But tomorrow, I think, will be another interesting day. I've said that 500 times on the show, but that's true because they're going to continue on these conversations, and I think we probably should have a little bit of light shed, whether it's just straight-up reporting or it's an article planted by a commissioner from one of these two leagues or from some other league that will apprise us of kind of where that conversation is sitting. But it's pretty obvious what Sankey's wanting and, what the Big Ten wants to do as well, and so – I'm very curious of kind of how specific this gets with those automatic qualifiers. That's going to be interesting, and I don't know, man. I could see it turning away some people, but I guess if you've got all the biggest brands, you're not really worried about losing fans here and there because you've got the bulk of fans, and I kind of feel like that's what is in mind with some of these moves. It's not about the greater good; it's about what's still going to work for those two and those two alone ultimately, and maybe that's a big bad thing I'm making up in my head, but that's the concern a lot of people have right now, and I think rightfully so given how much sway they both have.
Matt Parker's made some really nice comments, among others.